Hey Kids Zone team, this is your training on the policy manual. Now, if you're just starting out in Kids Zone, or maybe you've been serving for a while, you've probably heard by now that we have a policy manual that helps us create a really safe environment, which is actually one of our values and one of the things that we hold on to in creating a good experience at Kids Zone. So what I'm going to do is walk through the policy manual that we have. Now you can find this on our website or from your Kids Zone director or service coordinator, but this is a really important document that you have. Now as we go through, you'll see at the bottom here, on the bottom right, bottom left, there is a little spot for you to put your initials, signing that you're understanding what's happening. And at the very end, there's a spot for you to sign, just acknowledging that you're aware of everything going on with our policies and that you are going to adhere to those things. So as we go through, make sure you're keeping note of that. And what you're going to see as I go through this whole video is I will go through the policy manual, but I'm not going to read word for word everything on there. It is still a requirement that you actually read through the policy manual, but I'm going to just kind of briefly go through some sections and highlight a few points that are really important for you to know about and provide some clarification. So you're not just going through this alone going, what does he mean by that? What is this part trying to say? This is really just to provide some extra help for you. So whenever you first get the policy manual, you'll probably see that there are about 16 pages that aren't entirely relevant towards Kids Zone, and that's okay. So we're going to jump ahead to page 17, and you'll see that's the spot that's labeled Children and Youth Policy and Procedures. And what we're going to do is go through a lot of that section and just kind of talk through some of the stuff that goes with it. So once you're on page 17, if you need to pause the video, go for it, but we're going to start right on page 18 here, okay? So we're looking through children and youth abuse reporting, okay? Now what you'll see on pages 18 and 19 is a big old list of a lot of things that are classified as abuse. Now we're not going to read through all of those. If you need some clarification, you can read through those on your own. As we get to page 20, what you'll see is there's a few things, 20 and 21, you'll see there's a few things that we're really looking at, okay? We're looking at two different types of abuse here, things that you actually witness and things that are a little bit more in the gray area of things that you are hearing secondhand, okay? So in the previous training that we had, whenever we would talk about this specific section, we would specifically note how in Kids Zone at this point, we've never actually witnessed an adult or somebody just actually abuse a kid. Like we've never actually witnessed that, which is great. A lot of the situations that end up coming up are situations where you hear, or situations that qualify on pages 18 and 19 that you'll see. So in those situations, that's where we really want to try to get as much information as possible. And let me be clear on this. Whenever you're doing this, don't just hear that information and say, okay, cool, thanks so much for letting me know. You have to go to your service coordinator and your Kids Zone director so that that information can follow the correct channels so that we can respond appropriately. As a church, we are all required to be mandatory reporters, which means that whenever we hear information or things that even qualify as abuse, what we have to do is disclose that information to the proper authorities. So it is important that if you hear anything or you see anything, you need to disclose that information to a Kids Zone staff member, whether that's your service coordinator or your Kids Zone pastor. They will know how to get that information to the right channels and be able to help you out on the next steps with that. And it's really important that you communicate that. So you'll see even through pages 23, we're really focusing on this stuff with abuse. Please read through that because it is imperative and really can be a make or break it for some of the experiences that we have here in Kids Zone. As we keep going into section 5, you'll see we're talking about children and youth general policies, okay? So here's a few things that I have highlighted on here that I want to go through. First one being worker screening. Anybody who is 18 years or older in Kids Zone needs to have some type of screening done. And what we have, you'll see there's a website on the policy manual, and you've probably already seen this site and a few other places, but this is apcbackgroundcheck.com. Now, if you're over 18, doesn't matter what your past experience is, whether you've even done stuff in a school before, if you have other clearances, we need to have access to that to be able to see that so that we are confidently able to have a space where we know everybody in it has their clearances. So it's really important that if you are 18 or over, even if you just turned 18 and you were previously a student, you need to have this done so that we are creating a safe environment, okay? Now, our staffing ratios, you can see we have a 1-to-5 ratio, so try your best not to put yourself in a situation, or if you find yourself in a situation where you've got more than 5 kids, And I'm not talking about like you're sitting in a row and there's 6 kids in it, but if you find yourself alone in a room where it's you and 5 other kids, try to find another adult or another team member that can be there with you. Our access to children and youth, our rooms, okay, I'm on number 3 here. Our spaces that we have in our elementary spaces and our early childhood, we try to limit who's actually able to come into the room. So we don't just let anybody in. There's some specific processes that we allow if there's a guest or something like that that you can read on there. But specifically, we want to know the people that are in there, and we want to know that they have the proper clearances, the proper training, and they know exactly how to act. That's part of why you're doing this video right now, so that you're able to be prepped and you're able to be ready to be in those rooms. So we really take that seriously, who we allow into each room. And you can read some more information on how we allow non-parent visitors and parent visitors. And if you have questions on that, you can always talk to your Kids Zone director. They'll be able to give you some more helpful tips on how you can navigate that. Going on to number 4, we have drop off and pickup. At every single Kids Zone location, we have name tags and pickup tags that we give out. So it's really important. We have this as a rule in most of our spots, just telling kids, make sure you don't take off your name tags. But this is not just so that we know a kid's name, that's helpful, but this is so that we have documentation of who was dropped off and who's picking them up. That way we're not having a kid get dropped off and another parent coming and picking them up, or somebody who's not their parent or somebody that we don't know picking them up. That provides a lot of helpful security so that we're creating a safe environment for the kids. In the event that a kid's tag is lost or a parent's tag is lost, your Kids Zone director has all the process of what to do with that, and you'll be able to see that here as well of how to handle that situation. But it's really important that drop off and pickup. If you've been wondering about the check-in tags, it is really important stuff, and that's why we take that seriously. Now, as we move on to number 5, you'll see there's physical contact with minors. This is always a really fun conversation, okay? Now, if you're doing stuff typically in elementary, you'll notice that the guidelines are different between elementary and early childhood, okay? So if you are in elementary, you'll see there's a few different guidelines on there. There's a few that I love here. It says face, head, shoulder, and hands. Those are the safe spots, okay? So if you're wondering what kind of contact is going to be the best, it's best if you honestly just do as minimal as can be. And I know that can be a little bit, that can be difficult for some people because physical contact with a kid's development is a very real thing and an important thing, but we need to be safe with that. So, fist bumps, high fives, any cool handshakes you want to come up with. We even have on here short hugs or side hugs. All that stuff is very much okay. We don't want to have kids sitting on our laps, snuggling in during story time, stuff like that. Those types of actions are okay in early childhood. Those are also, we have kids that are different stages where we can't necessarily just have a baby running around. You have to hold them. So they're different things that we have going on there. Even and I have highlighted diaper changing. There's some specific things that we're following protocol-wise, and we are taking a very safe stance because as much as all these things can seem like they're just crazy and out there, a lot of these things are really to create a safe environment, because if we're not even creating a physically safe environment, we won't be able to create an emotionally safe environment that kids will be able to grow in. So you can read some of those other things. Whenever we move on to number 6 now, we're talking about discipline, okay? Now this is a very, very important one that we will look at here. So there's specific things that we are able to do discipline-wise, and there's other things that we do not do discipline-wise, okay? This is kind of just an extra thing that we're asking to the training. We're adding to the training here. These are just 3 things you want to look at, and you'd say, okay, these are the 3 areas we'd even contact a parent with regarding just extreme discipline situations. And these are not normal situations in Kids Zone, but it's important that you know about this. So that's why we're adding this. The 3 things would be defiant behavior. We're not talking about kids that are having trouble staying attentive. We're talking about kids that would compromise some of the safety of the entire room, of especially a kid coming in and we're asking like, all right, little Johnny, can you sit down? And him saying, no, like I'm not going to sit down, and just running around like crazy. At that point, we're not able to create a safe experience for him. Not the kid that we've asked to sit down, and after about a few minutes, then he gets up and runs around and we have to ask him to sit down again. Just the kid who, for whatever reason, is just deciding, I will not listen. that's no longer a safe space for them to be in, and then we'd contact a parent. The second one being if there was physical aggression. We've specifically had some kids that will hit, bite, kick, do some things that are not okay. It's really important that if a kid is causing some type of danger to other students or their kids, that we help remove him and put him in a safe situation back with their parents. The third one being repeated disruptive behaviors after receiving multiple warnings. So this is the kid that is just sitting there yelling, going crazy the whole time, and we've asked him on multiple occasions, hey, please don't do that. Let's be quiet. Let's talk about this. And they're just repeatedly not listening. That would be a situation that we would want to get parents involved. Now, those are the extreme situations. Let's talk about the discipline situations and what we're going to do back on number 6 here. So the type of things that you can see, we have giving a timeout, a reward system. You've probably even seen in Kid Zone, there's like a little sheet with some lightning bolts. Those are some things that we talk about with parents ahead of time. We'll sometimes withhold incentives. That would be like, you're not going to get candy at the end of the service, or we're going to have you sit in a different seat over here. And even just warning systems with consequences. These are very light things that are not putting us in situations where something bad can happen, but these are disciplinary situations that are helpful. Moving on to page 30 now. And you'll see, honestly, like the last thing that we have on here at the top of page 30 is contacting the children's coordinator or pastor. This is just a really good thing to do, period. And you'll see section C there, it says, under no circumstances, these are the situations that should never happen. There should never be harsh, demeaning words. We should never be forcing a child to repeat negative words. There's just a lot of things, especially anything physical happening. We just want to avoid that. That's not our place. And as we move on to number 7 now, we're moving on to one-on-one situations, okay? Now, this is a really important rule just to understand across the board. Never put yourself alone in a room with a child, okay? Whether you're like, oh, well, it's not really like a small room. There are situations that can happen, and it is important that you think proactively, what are the situations where I even could be alone with a child? The biggest one that is the hardest to navigate is what happens if I'm a team member, I am at Kid Zone, and I need to use the bathroom. What do I do there? I will typically get another leader and ask, stand outside the door and tell kids to wait until I come out. Okay, that is one of the safest things you can do in this situation. We never want to put you alone in a situation, and if you do find yourself in a situation alone with a kid, the goal is not to leave them alone in some giant room, but the goal especially is to, if you need to, like FaceTime somebody immediately, get somebody else in the room. Like, you do not want to stay alone in a room with a kid. That is not safe for you or the child in that situation. Even if you're in a room where it's a little bit smaller, but you've got a few kids, leave the door open. That way it's just creating some accountability and some safety. All right, so number 8, transportation of minors. Only in certain situations and really specific ones that you have permission from your Kid Zone director can you just move or transport any students. Bathrooms. I know I mentioned this before, but I want to just kind of reiterate this one again. Do not be alone in a room with a kid in the bathroom, especially if a kid goes in there and he's in the bathroom for a while. You do not have the full permission or responsibility to go in there by yourself. There's times where, depending on the room, you might need to go in there to rescue someone that is having an emergency. Do not go in by yourself. Bring somebody else in there with you. Grab another adult. Grab another team member, and make sure your Kid Zone director is informed about the situation so that you're not just rushing into something that could be potentially dangerous. So number 10 now, we have overnight events. You can see some of the information on there. 11 is an important one, drugs and alcohol. We typically, in a lot of these situations where we have stuff come up, you'll see exactly what we're going to follow there process-wise, and that's going to continue on to page 32. Number 12, you'll see some violent situations. This goes back to some of the things that we would contact a parent about, specifically with some stuff with some disciplinary actions. These are situations we want to try to, at all costs, just avoid. This isn't just things that are happening physically. You can see down in section C, even whenever we're talking about weapons. But you'll see there's some really good tips on conflict management there and communication. That's important information to read through. 13, we're talking about medical stuff. Here's just the blanket information to take across the board here, okay? What we will do at KidZone, the most that we will do are Band-Aids and ice packs. Ice packs for like small things that are just helping. I got hit with a dodgeball in the arm and I'm not feeling too well. Here you go. Anything else across the board, we will not be administering, we will not be giving. Parent comes in saying, I've got this medication for my child. You say, okay, you're going to hold on to that then. Only in situations where we have youth students and it is an overnight event where we have a completely new process for what we're doing with some of our medical stuff. But just across the board, that is the extent to which we will give. That's not obviously everything that we're covering with our medical stuff. You'll see allergies and snacks in section B is an important one. With that, it's important that if you are giving any types of snacks out, that you know exactly what the allergies are for specific kids in your groups. Sometimes that's something that's written on their badge. Sometimes that's something new that happened. That's just something you constantly want to be aware of, especially if you have a small group and you want to bring something new. Never a bad idea to send out an email to the parents and ask, hey, here's what we're thinking about bringing. Is that okay? Do we have any specific allergies to that? Especially with how allergies are now coming into like different things and going into like so many different aspects of foods and just all over the board. It is important that you ask and you check ahead of time. Treatment. So again, all that we're going to be administering is Band-Aids and ice packs. If there's anything, like if a kid's like bleeding and you're at all even questioning it, by all means, contact the parent immediately. We never want to leave that up to chance. We never want to wait to tell a parent about that stuff. So make sure you're going through all that stuff, and you'll see there's some specific steps for directors to take there. Now you'll see number 14, we're talking about a safe environment. You know that in a lot of ways we're trying to create a physically safe environment, and a lot of that it even comes down to our cleaning and sanitation. Now regardless of your feelings of COVID or anything else, kids just have a really great way of being able to spread germs through a lot of different things. So it's really important that our spaces are being cleaned and sanitized regularly. And even some of the things that we're upholding of making sure that kids have shoes on and they're not running around barefoot because of some of the things that can get spread that way. There's so many different things that we want to do, not to take away from a kid's experience, but to be able to create a safe one so that they're able to have a lasting, great impact there. So you'll be able to see some more things on there on just even appropriate materials you can use. Number 15, we're talking about photos and privacy. It's really important that we don't just come into KidZone and take a bunch of pictures on random stuff. You'll see some kids on their name tag might have a sticker or something extra. That's just so that we're able to know which kids can't actually be photographed because they're in some type of foster care or something else. We don't want to be causing any type of issues, especially that would compromise a child's safety by taking some photos of them and then posting them online. We just want to be really careful with that. So make sure that we're not like, I know it can be really easy to just grab like your phone out, put something on Instagram real quick. Just try to make sure that if that does happen, or if you have approval from your KidZone director to do that, safest bet is just make sure that like it is kids that have already had permission to be photographed. And then what you're getting is not just, let's get as many kids in here as possible. And our last section we have here is on evacuation. Now there's some specific instructions you're going to want to ask your KidZone director about. But the most important thing that you do is remain calm. These situations can be stressful and anxious for kids. So it's important that you are leading in that moment and that you are remaining calm, even if you yourself might be freaked out on the inside. Just remain calm. Now, I want to kind of direct you to the last two pages that we have here. This is our children's and youth leadership commitment. This is a really important part that we have to our policy manual because in creating a safe environment, we want to create a spiritually safe environment too. And by taking this commitment and moving forward with this, you're saying I'm going to be here and I'm going to be an active member of this team and I'm going to create a safe environment. And so it's really important that we have that. Take some time to read over that and look over that and make sure you sign and you date that. And you're not just signing some little thing. That's an important step that you're taking. So I hope this was really informative for you as you're looking on joining one of our KidZone teams. And we are so excited for what God's going to do through you as you make a difference here in KidZone.